Yes.
I call this meeting of the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals to order. Today is Monday, April 21st. And roll call, Noel is here, Stephen?
Here.
Joshua's excused, Brian?
Here.
Barb?
Here.
All right. Approval of the agenda for the April 21st meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried. Approval of minutes of the March 17th, 2025 meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. All right, on to regular order of business, and I've got some reading to do before we start. The Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals hears and acts on appeals for variances from city zoning code requirements. The members of this board are appointed, and the board acts as a quasi-judicial body during these appeals, which means that appeals are presented somewhat like a case is presented in court, and the board acts as the judge and determines whether to grant the appeal by a majority vote. For each item, we'll hear from both the applicant and staff, as well as any additional witnesses where appropriate. If you are the petitioner or an applicant for an item on tonight's agenda, please come take a seat at the table when your item is called. And before we start then with this particular appeal, we want to make sure that we have no conflicts of interest at the table here. Because it is the goal of the Board of Appeals to provide and conduct a hearing that is fair in form, appearance, and substance, we are ensuring this hearing satisfies those goals by asking a couple of questions of our members. So for each of these questions, members of the Board of Appeals, please confirm the following by stating I confirm. I do not have a conflict of interest in this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm. I have not received any communication from any person or party about this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm. Great. So we'll begin with Appeal 25-06, consideration with possible action on a request from Antonio Bomarito, applicant and property owner, requesting to exceed maximum standards for a front yard parking stall for a 1 or 2 family residential home at 445 South Baird Street. Would the petitioner please join us at the table?
Ariel.
Morning, and before we hear from you, we'll hear from staff, and I will ask an oath for the staff. John, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Please tell us about this case.
All right, so we are looking at a home that is located, I believe, the corner of Baird in Chicago. It's a new home that's been built on a smaller lot. They are seeking to put in a new driveway on the side that would be the interior part of the driveway, the west side of the property. This is looking south to north. There are 2 variances that are in play on this one. We're going to first look at driveway shall lead from the public right-of-way directly to a garage plus 24 inches on either side. They're looking to put on an extra 8 feet of pavement off the garage door. Secondly, 44-1746 sub 3 sub C, where the width of the driveway to the garage will go to the parking lot exceeds the maximum of the property line. You need to have the triangle taper, so the driveway shall be tapered between the garage and the edge of the legal uncovered stall, a minimum of 5 feet inside the parcel. This particular application is looking to have 3 feet instead for a triangle taper. So going back to the photo, this is what the property looks like right now. The property is meeting the legal specs: 1 interior garage stall, 1 tandem stall outside of the property. This red area is the area where the applicant was looking to potentially put down some sort of pavement. This is an aerial photo of the overall area. Baird, Washington Middle School is back up this way. East High School in Joannes is off to the northeast. You're seeing an aerial from 2023 when the property was a vacant piece of land, green space, and a new residence has been constructed on the property. What you see here is the application from the property owner. Looking to put in an 8-foot wide parking stall, 15 feet in length alongside the existing parking area, and then have a 3-foot triangle taper back down to the south. I'll note, as far as just parking stalls and Labor requirements, you have to have it be 8 feet wide at least, and it has to be 15 feet in depth. In that regard, it's meeting that what has to be done for just a typical stall. But remember, with the exception of your exceptions for attached garages, you can't have a parking stall that doesn't lead directly to a legal parking stall. So the places on this property where you technically could put a stall, if you say here, is if there was 8 feet between the houses and then 15 feet minimum, you could have a driveway that leads up this way. Now I'll note, going back to what's shown here, is there's a entryway that leads to the house. So practically speaking, as far as how this house has been constructed, that would not necessarily fit back in that area. But there is no parking stall exception for detached garages. Only for the one stall for an attached garage can you have the extra parking stall in the front yard. So the only spot that may potentially have an extra technical area to park an extra vehicle on this property would be between the house and the garage if there was 8 feet. But there is said entryway to that door. Now, the house could have been designed differently to not have that as a problem. This is a new house. But in the meantime, that is the request from the applicant to have both those exceptions. So if you were to do the 5-foot triangle taper and meet code, that would mean that based off of where the house is at, the parking stall would only be 13 feet in length. And so that would mean the parking stall would not meet code in the order of potential variances that could come to play. So asking for the extra 8 feet alongside the garage and asking for a reduction from 5 to 3 feet for the triangle taper.
Great.
Go ahead.
And then, so we'll, well, are there any questions for staff?
I have
Sir?
one.
Go ahead.
So in the other properties in the neighborhood, are they mostly one-stall garages with one driveway? I'm just kind of looking at my...
Right, I would suggest most of the houses have detached garages. Most of them have their garages because in the back of the property, so width-wise, it's probably still just one aisle. But as far as potentially stacking cars, that's more likely on other houses throughout the neighborhood itself.
Okay, that helps me. Thank you.
I have a question too. Did they build 2 houses on that lot or just one?
So what you're seeing here is this, you're referring to this parcel here, or?
Yeah, the parcel you've got up right now.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you look on Google Maps, I can see the original house,
Mhm.
and the driveway was on Baird,
Yeah.
and with the garage in the back. But the size of the house, it almost looks like you could put 2 up there. Do you know if there is 2?
No, this is one parcel
Okay.
here, and there's an even smaller parcel right here.
Okay.
With a smaller house.
All right. I just couldn't tell from the pictures.
Maybe see part of that here. Yeah, there's that house, the edge of it on the neighboring property.
Yeah.
This is
So
one
I'm talking
parcel.
about one down, but that looks like the original house.
That's, yeah, this is not, yeah, correct. There was not 2 parcels or 2
Right.
buildings on this parcel.
Fair enough,
Just one.
fair enough. Oh, last question. There seems to be a discrepancy between this and the, if you don't know why that is, that's fine. but-
As far as what, this red area here?
Yeah,
That was the initial request from the property owner that had this red marking on it.
okay.
It was on a PDF that I couldn't take that off. But
Yeah.
so disregard the red area, that was just where they were thinking about
Was just
placing
thinking
the
about
parking.
it. Okay, all right.
But they
The
talked
ask
to
is the
staff,
other one.
and that's where we got to the site plan requests where we're at today of right here.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, just wanted to make
Thank
sure.
you, because I forgot to ask that.
Any other questions for staff? All right, let's proceed to our petitioner. Would you please tell us your name and address for the record?
Of course, it's Antonino Bonmarillo, 445 South Bear Street.
Thanks, Anthony. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? Okay, please tell us about your situation and why you need a variance.
Absolutely. So first of all, nice to meet you, everyone. I just purchased this property back in end of February from, our Realtor. Yeah, definitely it's kind of a tough market to buy, starter homes and whatnot. So we found this little area of Green Bay that, we've lived in for the past couple of years. We decided it was a good fit, even though it was definitely, smaller on the side of area and yardage. However, our Realtor did mention that we would be able to park on the street if needed, because obviously we only have a little garage and the driveway there. Unfortunately, the house being a little bit on the smaller side, we're forced to use the garage, not for a vehicle, but just for storage. Otherwise, there would be no room in the house. So right now, my wife is parking on the driveway, leaving me with no choice but to be on the street. I thought it was legal until up to about a week into owning the property. I started getting tickets. And contacted the police department and said, oh yeah, actually you have to request a special, request, and you can only do that up to 3 months out of the year. And everything else would be illegal parking. So that was very unfortunate, because, that happened after, signing everything, and I thought it was legal. That's what the Realtor, led me to believe. But here we are today. So that's what the request for the variance is. It's the garage. It's an impossibility for us to use in the foreseeable future, and it would make this property perfect for us and for any future owners in the future if 2 vehicles could be parked on that side, even, so one can grow a family and stuff of that nature. So if possible, I don't have any, specific hard requests by any means. It can be whatever material, you all deem fit. But yeah, that driveway is really, I don't think it's a want. It's more of a need for our family. Otherwise, I do not know where else I could park my vehicle at this time. So, I'm willing to do, patio blocks, or concrete, asphalt, or whatever, the city would prefer. But yeah, that would be really important for my family and I at this time. As far as right now, I've kept getting requests from the police department to extend my parking availability, but obviously that comes with limits. So that would be why I'm here today.
Great. Questions for our petitioner?
So your real estate agent told you you could either park on the street or expand that driveway?
He said, push comes to shove, I can always park on the street, for sure. However, it should be pretty easy to request a driveway expansion. Quickly found out that was not the case. But yeah, so unfortunately, here we are.
Any other questions? All right, sir, we'll deliberate and make a decision.
I appreciate it.
I'm gonna take a stab, since it's my last meeting.
All right.
All right, so I believe that there is an exceptional circumstance here. Because this property is, the lot is so small, it's, and the garage cannot be set far back, so it can't have a long driveway. So I see that as an exceptional circumstance. Also with that comes with number 5, a hardship. I'm going to tie that into number 5 too. It's a hardship because of the area of the lot. Preservation of property rights. The preservation and enjoyment of the same substantial property rights possessed by other properties would be, in my mind, most homes are 2-car homes nowadays, or more. And that the variance is necessary to preserve the enjoyment of the same substantial property rights possessed by other properties in the same district and vicinity. Again, harking back to the fact that the driveway cannot be longer than it is. I don't see any detriment at all. Absence of detriment will not create a substantial detriment to the adjacent property. And so now my hard one is number 1, preservation of intent. Who wants to help me on that? Nobody? Okay, give it a shot, Barb. I don't, in this case, I'm going to say the variance is not inconsistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the regulations for the district in which is requested. It is a district of various tiny houses and tiny yards and starter homes, which is certainly a need in this economy. And I'm going to go with, I move to approve.
Before we go any further, I neglected to ask, is there anybody else who has testimony to give on this issue in the audience or online? Okay, thanks. So, Barb, was that a motion just now?
Why not? Because, you guys can always vote it down, so. I'm giving it as a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
I'm sorry,
I know.
it's self-inflicted. I know you don't have enough space in the house, but you bought the house. Get a storage unit. I mean, that's really the solution here. The reason you can't put 2 cars there is because you won't use the garage. And we have to, in order to do this, we have to satisfy those 5 conditions in order to allow it. And I gotta say, I do feel for you, okay? You're not the first person to come in here who's been lied to by a contractor or a real estate agent. But, I get the house is too small. I can't come up with justifications for this when you have alternatives available that are, maybe not ideal, but I guess that's all I've got to say. So if you want to move to a vote, you can. We'll see this.
Right.
Barb, is this for both of the variances? There's 2 on the table right here. Do the most of the?
I think that they both could be the same. I could even go further with that minimum of 3 feet instead of 5, because it has to be a certain length, right? So, but yes. Is that okay?
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second on the argument that the 5 tests are met for both issues here in the variance request. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So we've got 2 for and 2 against. That's a fail on the vote to approve the request.
Correct.
Do you want to keep discussing it?
Well, is there anything that we can do to,
I don't work, so let's just start here. Let's try little bites and see where I can get. Let's start with this. I don't care about the parking tape. I don't care about the taper part. That's fine, I'd approve that.
all right?
The taper to me is incidental to the actual problem. I have all the sympathy. I'm trying to come up with a reason to allow this. Do we know, does the specific, could you bring that ordinance back up? I'm sorry, John, I can't, can you do that? Directly to a garage door opening plus 24% legal parking, but, and then the rest of that also says that it has to lead to a backyard, right, on 44, 17, 46?
No, so that one's just a taper. There are
Oh, that's
other
a
ways
taper.
to address getting to a legal parking stall if it leads to one that goes to a rear yard or a side yard. If there was, give for instance, if there happened to be 10 feet of space on the side of the, or sorry, 12 feet of space,
Mhm.
all this back, 10.5 feet on the side of the property. We had this happen a lot on this board to where you can have a legal parking stall alongside a garage as long as you maintain the minimum of 8 feet for the width of the stall and 2.5 feet for a side yard. That comes up quite a bit. There's no space in this one to do that.
Right, and the
So-
space between the house and the garage, let's just for argument's sake, let's say there was no entryway, no nothing in there,
Yeah.
it was just grass. Is it wide enough to conform?
That's where I need to defer back to the, if it's 8 feet wide there, yes, you could do that, yeah.
but doesn't it have 2.5
If
feet?
it is.
Is it 8 feet wide between the house and
It sure didn't look like it
the
was.
garage? It doesn't look like it on the
It
pictures, the
didn't look
pictures
like it
are
on the
deceived.
picture.
I thought I took some measurements, but.
Yeah, this one right here.
How would you thought I'd ask that question, right? I mean,
So you're showing 8 feet from the corner of the house to the existing driveway.
But the
And
garage
that
is slightly
appears to
in.
be.
but
it's
that seems to be
slightly-
right on the edge of the garage. so-
Yeah.
I'm willing to stipulate that that's 8 feet. Now, so the question comes here is, This is a balance between considering that this is solvable without pouring any more driveway. It's not ideal, I agree. But do we consider that, it says you could, and you could, with sufficient effort, drive up there. Meaning, you could remove the porch and do it. But is that a reasonable stance? I'm asking the board members here. Do you think that's a reasonable thought?
Yeah, I look at that and I hear what you're saying, but I think about that entry door, that would need to move to the side of the house, and then you've got an egress, it looks like an egress window right there
yeah.
for maybe some finished space in the lower level. So all that's getting jacked around, and then you end up with a side door that's midway up the house, and we don't even know what's in there in terms of the rooms on that first floor. It seems like an awful stretch to me. I mean, if the petitioner were to come back later with a plan that worked that out, I could entertain it.
I'm just suggesting, does the having the porch and the door there actually, I mean, I guess the thing says the regulation says that you have to, it has to lead to that area. Didn't say it had to be usable to lead to that area, just that it could. I mean, am I slicing that too fine?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, all right.
We'll go with you.
But nice try, but I
That
think
was a great
that's,
try.
like you're saying, if you pave the area between the house and the garage, we call it a parking space, even though he can't use it, and then he gets the approach to it to parking?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I don't think that would.
Yeah,
but it could work.
Nice try.
I was reaching, because I don't know how else to handle this. Yes, sir.
I'll also note that the more concrete you have, the more chance we get into our impervious surface
Impervious
concrete.
surface.
Yeah, fair enough.
Oh, that's true.
And he's not hitting any of that now, is he?
No, it's close, but it's not there with what's
And then it
requested.
would.
I was
So
thinking
I'd
about
like to
that.
hear from Noel, and, because you didn't even talk, and yet you voted.
Yeah, I agreed with Stephen on the.
Yeah, these kind of
that
changes
We didn't
mine.
meet all the tests.
It's kind of
I-
And, you know, somebody's choices about storage doesn't, for me, create a hardship in compliance, you know? The fact that you're electing to use the garage for something other than to park a vehicle doesn't mean you don't have enough vehicle parking. You're making a choice about how to use that structure, and it's not a hardship, it's a decision.
Does everyone need, lawnmower, all that? I mean, I'm thinking of my
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
yeah, no,
place.
yeah.
I mean, I have 2 stalls, but one of them I use for my lawnmower, everything else, not that it matters necessarily, but I don't think it's reasonable to have everything in one stall. And I'm thinking of future use too.
Yeah, it's tough, yeah.
But it would be easier and cheaper for him to put up a shed than it would be to pour concrete.
Where?
put a shed.
On the other side of the garage.
Or between the two. Yeah, I mean, if I were building this, I would have built it with an attached garage.
He didn't build it.
But
He-
that's the thing,
But he
right?
didn't build it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I gotta say, unless somebody's got an alternative motion that they believe meets the test of granting the variance here for the hardship, I think we gotta let this go, and maybe the petitioner can continue a conversation with staff to see if there might be another way to pull a rabbit out of their hat here, or we've just gotta move on.
So it's just number 5 that you're saying? That you can't get to number 5?
Correct, yeah, I mean,
I
that's.
don't think I can get through number 1 either, really. I mean, it really comes down to that.
Yeah,
I was
I think
really
it-
grasping for straws with the
You
drive-through,
did well.
but, I mean, it's just, this just really comes down to the unfortunate fact that you were told something that wasn't true. It might have changed your decision to buy the house. And I'm personally really sorry for that. But it doesn't also, it's not a legal reason for us to make that difference. Our decisions are challengeable in certain point. And we have to have reasoning that would stand up there.
Sorry, Barb.
I did
Sorry,
try
sir.
the kitty card, though, since it was my last meeting, but
Yeah.
that didn't work.
Sorry.
If I could give that to you, I would.
Kind of knew it.
Right. Thank you, sir. Sorry we weren't
Sorry
able to
about that.
accommodate you today.
Thank you for your time.
All right, moving on to 2507. And again, if I may, for the following statements, members of the Board of Appeals, if you would, state, I confirm, if that's true. I do not have a conflict of interest in this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm. I have not received any communication from any person or party, other than the staff packet, about this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm. All right. Appeal 2507, consideration with possible action on a request from Don McDonald of Donnie Max Landscaping, is the applicant, and Michael J. Shea, the property owner, requesting to exceed maximum setback standards for a driveway and parking within the side yard and front yard setbacks for a 1 or 2 family residential home at 3535 Nicolay Drive. Would the petitioner please join us at the table here? And for staff, John, I'm assuming you again, is the testimony you're about to give the truth?
Yes.
Great, please proceed.
All right, so what we're looking at here is 2 questions that come into play. One being for attached garages, driveways looking to the attached garage shall meet the applicable side and rear setbacks for the structure. In this case, you happen to have an 8-foot setback because it's a 2-story home that's attached garage. The applicant is seeking as low as 2 feet from the side yard setback. 44-174-6 sub 3 sub E, this is side loading drives. The maximum width of a driveway leading to a side loaded garage should not exceed 12 feet in width, except for the area directly leading to the garage, where it can be increased to the width of the garage. The applicant is seeking for a driveway width which exceeds the maximum at approximately 81 foot 5 inches more than what is permitted. And we'll see that here through the overall site plan. So where you see the star, that's the property. And right now they have a shared driveway that comes from the property to the south to go to a large driveway that is existing on the property. Their garage is side loaded. You can see that vehicle that's parked like it's going into the garage on this property. There's an image of what the property looks like here in the past with a kind of a circular drive in the middle of it with some landscaping, but a large concrete driveway to the side of the garages. Look back for variances in the past on this, and site plans did not find it for this property. It was built, but it would obviously exceed what our typical standards are for a driveway. These are some additional photos that were supplied by the applicant, which they can expand on if they'd like to here during the testimony. This is what is being proposed. So rather than having the shared driveway with the property owner to the south, their proposed driveway would come from Nicolay and go around the shed that is existing and then head back towards the existing home. Now, as noted, driveways have to go in a direction that's leading directly to the garage area. In this case, staff felt it was, the intent of the code was met because at Nicolay, there has to be an odd angle to attack the road. If you came in directly how the property line goes, parallel with other property lines, you would not reach Nicolay at 90 degrees. That would be an issue for turning onto Nicolay. This allows for the vehicle to come and approach a perpendicular angle and then go around the existing shed directly back over towards the property. So that's fine. But the parts that come into play that exceed code would be, 1, the side yard setbacks. The first one's being at 2 feet down here by the southern and jogging property line back towards the property to the south. The second being 3 feet from the property line at the shed area back over this way. So they're asking for primarily a 12-foot wide drive that goes hundreds of feet into the property and having it dip around the shed. So the shed back over towards the property line is about 20 feet. So there's room. Keep in mind, a driveway width has to be a minimum of 8 feet and a maximum of 12 feet for side-loaded garage spaces. So they meet the code with the 12-foot, but by being wider, you're getting closer towards that side property line at the shed. Then, as far as the interpretation goes, remember, you can have a driveway that leads directly to a garage. They're asking for 81.5 feet off the house, back over this way to where that actual driveway tapers to an allowed width at 12 feet. So, just want to give you an idea of what you could do by code on the property. Going back, you have a little taper here to, or sorry, not taper, but hook to attack and lay the proper angle. The garage shed that's in the middle of the property, as noted, is 20 feet from the property line. You could have a 12-foot wide driveway. That would still be, would allow for 8 feet between the side yard. And you would keep that going straight through to where you get to the garage, that side little, let's back to this picture over here. And you kind of see that right here in this photo where that newer concrete looks like. You're allowed to take that area of the garage, the double loaded garage, plus 24 inches, and take that back down to the south to within 8 feet of the property line. You can do that. So in this photo, that's kind of what you would see here. You have a width of garage. You understand it'd be some sort of turning radius to get into the garage in both situations. But garage is back on this way, and you have an 8-foot side yard setback. That's what's allowable by code for the property. But I'll note what they're asking for is similar to what exists right now on the property and has for decades, with the exception that the entrance now would not come from back over this way, but would be their own individual entrance. And at that point, this driveway would no longer be shared with the neighboring property owner.
Questions for staff?
And the plan is to replace all the concrete?
The plan is to replace all the concrete, have different types of concrete block, but replace the concrete and then put in the new driveway throughout the road.
And if they just did the driveway
Mhm.
up to the existing concrete there,
Yeah.
would that change anything?
The part we'd have the issue, if they went, no, because you'd be expanding an existing non-conforming driveway, so
Okay.
it's the whole bag.
The whole thing, all right.
Yep.
So is the only difference is that that is curved instead of straight past the shed? Help me, I'm just trying to
Okay.
get this.
So in this situation
Yeah.
with the shed,
Yeah.
they want to have an extra 7 feet right here to kind of have as an area
Oh.
to back out onto and have space to do if you were placing a vehicle or
Like-
some sort of equipment into the shed, to not go and have 12 feet right off the shed itself and not have that 12-foot driveway be directly at the shed itself. In this situation, they're looking to have about 8.5 feet and 7 feet until you get to that actual 12-foot line with
And that's
the...
the
But
problem.
that's just a man door, right?
So that would be the shed that you see right
Right.
here.
But the one on the side where the extra concrete is, that's just a man door, that's not a garage door.
We're referring back to the shed
The
itself?
shed, yes.
No, I believe the 7.5 had, I'll need to get, I'm going to defer this back to the property
All
owner.
right, we'll ask when
Yeah.
we're...
You're thinking it's this door, but I don't
Yeah.
think it is that door.
Well,
Go up one.
the documents
Right there.
kind of,
Is it that door? Because that's.
the documents kind of indicate that it is that door. Because
Kind of a small-
there's discussion in here about it being dangerous to step right out into the driveway from the door. I suppose that could be it. Well, you know, we'll just ask it. And Barb, did you get your question answered?
Yeah, I did.
Other questions for staff? All right, let's turn to our petitioners. Mr. McDonald and Mr. Shea. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Michael Shea, and my address is 3535 Nicolay Drive.
And you are?
Don McDonald, Don Mix Landscaping, and I'm at 1865 Commercial Way.
Great. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
I do.
Right. Thanks. Take it away. Tell us what's going on here.
Okay. There's a couple of things. The initial property, and really what we're asking for as you go along to keep in mind, is to not expand any of the current configuration, but to be able to have access to it. So I can explain some of the questions that you were asking too. One of the interesting things about this property, when I bought it back in 1990, there was a access on the, what you're looking at, left side of that building called Nicolay Way. The city actually had a right-of-way put through that property from the one to the north through the southern property for some kind of a planning to put another road in there. Well, about the time I bought that, they had the variance or the abandonment of that in process. And somewhere around the time I bought it, they abandoned that whole thing. There actually wasn't right-of-way into that piece that all got taken out when they reissued the deed to my name. So currently, I have no legal access to that, and that was pointed out to me a couple of years ago when I put a small mortgage on the bank. And they said, well, you don't have legal access, but they looked at the old deed, and I have a good relationship with the bank. It was a small amount, so they got past it. But now, recently, I put the property in trust because I'm getting to an age where I'm starting to think about estate planning and things of that nature. And if I do, for some unfortunate reason, pass away, and my children inherit this, they have absolutely no legal access to it. I couldn't sell this property today because of that. So that's what prompted the whole activity to begin. My neighbors are here, we've had a good relationship sharing the property today. However, one day, if they were to sell the property and we get new property owners, I'm not so sure they'd be so kind. So that's why the activity started to put in a new driveway. So your question about the front shed, that does have a garage door.
On the side where the driveway is?
Yes,
Okay.
and lawnmowers are in there, the
Yep,
ATV
yep.
with the snow plow and all that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
We got a refrigerator and a freezer up in there, and that's why in my notes that you may have, I talked about the pedestrian door specifically, but the other doors, to put the lawnmower or the sweeper on the back of the lawnmower when I pull it out or whatever, I would be right in the middle of the road, and I have a concern. The other portion of that is that if we went to that 8 feet or whatever, it would push it so far up against the building that curve that it makes actually would come within a foot or two of the side of the building. So that's why we designed it to do that. There's 3 feet there, there's 4 feet out to the other driveway, so it's a total of 7 feet there total. And the writing is very small, but that would be all asphalt all the way down. So then from there, coming back through, we did move out to 8 feet down at the bottom property line, and there is a large chunk of asphalt right where his pointer is down to the left a little bit, that's on the neighbor's property. If you go back to the pictures, John, the 2 pictures that we have. Yeah, what I'm showing here is the property line is actually onto the asphalt today. There is to the left of that a very large area of 60-foot trees with a drainage area in there. So before I had it surveyed, none of us had any idea that that property line actually came over. So we're talking about moving that back and then 2 more feet there. It's actually more than 8 feet to the center of that drainage area if we do that. Just the 2 foot back. So that's what I intended to show there. And yeah, I did intend to show the pedestrian door, kind of where the driveway was. That's what those 2 drawings show. Okay, so if we go back to the other drawing, the other issue is by the garage today, when I bring, can we go to the original drawing? Barbara, one of the questions you had is that pretty much the configuration. If you look at that island there, that property line is within 3 or 4 feet of that island. When that comes down and makes that cut, we have to move that whole thing and make it smaller in order to fit into the new configuration. Because there's only, like I said, about 4 feet from the edge of that island to that property line. It actually comes down and makes a hard turn and goes back. Their property is bigger at the road and shorter, narrower at the bay, and ours is wider at the bay and narrower at the road. Yeah, you can actually see it right there. So there's not even enough room now to get a car through there. So the intentions were to go into the property line, bring back the asphalt and to a couple of inches. The other thing, where that red car is right now, today, when I come around that circle with my pickup truck, I have to make 2 moves to get into the garage. With my wife's car on the right side, I can't make a turn and come directly into it. I have to back up almost to the property line now for my truck in order to get it aligned with that garage door. So that's the idea, that's the reason that's so wide there. The other issue is then, of course, in our modern time and day, UPS trucks or prime trucks or whatever need to be able to make a turn in there. And, my wife was telling folks downstairs that, I had an experience where a prime truck met a UPS truck, and I thought, oh no, we finally gotten to that point in life. They met each other in the driveway. So really, that is no more than we have today. We kind of squared off the edge coming around by the garage, but the idea was to keep the same footprint. The asphalt will be a replacement because the asphalt's 30-some years old, 35 years old, and we've lived there 35 years. So that's why we're getting new asphalt. All it's just to resurface it, basically. And let's see, as far as individual questions, do you have the document that I provided, which
Yeah.
Yep, I'm just
talked
looking
about,
at it.
tried to answer your questions about what qualifies for the variance? I think I talked about some of those. And obviously being over 100 yards from the Nicolay Drive, it's not possible to pizza deliveries to stop on the road and come down in order to do that. But the intentions were not to really change anything from what we have, but to bring in a new driveway. That's the intention.
Thank you. Questions for the petitioners?
So the original problem is that you don't have legal access.
Yes.
That could be solved by simply getting easements on the existing property. They can grant you a legal permanent easement that would survive you.
Yeah, and I pondered that. It says easy, but it ends up becoming a contract, between whoever has the property and yourself. And that easement, all that says, or depending on how you negotiate a contract and go through all that, you have to put in all kinds of stipulations in terms of whether it becomes asphalt or not asphalt, who cares for it, all of those. I mean, it ends up being a significant, I can say, contract and negotiation and headache in itself. So I just take exception to it being easy. Depending on who it is, it could be very, very difficult. And today, again, my neighbors are fantastic, and they might be able to work through it, but the next people coming in, it's just
Well, the next people coming in don't get a chance to change it.
change it, as long as we've got every single I dotted and T crossed, which.
Pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
when they buy the house, they're aware of the easement, and if they don't like it, they cannot buy the house. That's the deal for them. They don't get to come back to you and say different.
Right.
But I can see your points, though. Your point is well made. So, and right now, you're saying that the asphalt is deteriorated.
Yes, it needs to be replaced anyway.
Understood, gotcha. The sticking point, at least for me, is you're so far out of code for that stuff up by your garage. If you saw the one that John drew that would be legal and within code, and let's just for sake of argument right now, let's not worry about the shed.
Sure.
That is legal, but it's nowhere near the size of the driveway you have now.
And it would not function. There's no way I could get in there with my car unless I had to make 3 or 4 turns to line up with that driveway, nor anyone else to come in there and make a turn in there without doing 3 or 4 turns to get out of there.
Fire truck.
Fire trucks are, yeah, that's a good point too, fire trucks coming down through there.
I'm not sure what that centerpiece of fire truck's gonna get through there anyway. if they
Oh, it's
turn
big,
around.
it would be big enough. to do
They'll be able to
turnaround.
pull up on there.
Yep, and actually you can drive on that centerpiece too, it's not above the ground where the pavers are, it's just a small.
That circle in the center, they could run it right over. If it was an emergency type thing.
And again, the objective is not to make anything more or less different than the way it's been for 35 years. and
Right, but that's
using a
not, but that's
doorbell.
not our concern. Our concern is, do we grant you a variance to the code that tells you you can only have it the way his picture shows it? And is that, do you have a reasonable exception? I do think you do have some good points in here, and you've clearly thought this out. So that's points in your favor. John, can you bring up sorry.
Go ahead.
I just was going to ask him to bring up the list.
Go ahead.
If anybody else has any questions.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, is there any other questions from any other members for the petitioner here? Stephen, are you going to have any other questions for the petitioner here?
Not immediately. no.
Okay, so, all right, so thank you for that. John, go ahead.
There may be members of the audience who want to speak as well.
Is there any additional evidence that we haven't heard that needs to be brought by folks who are not at the table with us right now?
I'll let my husband, Pete, do you want to speak?
Sure. I wasn't at the table, so I wasn't sure I was allowed to because they keep muting me, so.
Sure. Pete, before we hear from you, can you please state your name and address for the record?
Sure, it's Pete Simon, 3525 Nicolay Drive.
And Pete, is the testimony you're about to give going to be the truth?
Yes,
All right, please proceed.
sure. We don't necessarily approve or disapprove of what it is. I just wanted to make sure that we had the ability to actually have the conversation when it came through. I mean, we've had great relationship with Mike and Lou and don't really have an issue necessarily with what they're doing. I'm just trying to understand a couple of things, like up by the front of the garage, does it need to be 3 feet off of the property line? And if it is, then so be it. I think pushing it the way whoever described before with like the straight driveway, like right in front of Mike's garage, I don't see that as being personally what would probably be in the best interest of Mike or anybody else, because all that's gonna happen is if he's only got 12 feet in front of his garage, he's gonna end up probably in the grass at some point, so that doesn't probably make a whole lot of sense there. And as far as down on the lower end, I mean, it's been closer anyway, so, I don't know. I mean, it just wants to make sure that it meets the requirements and things like that, but other than what it is, my preference and what Mike and I had talked about earlier in the week is, the goal isn't to make this look janky and ugly, and I think whoever had that drawing with the driveway going straight back down with a tiny little area, I don't want to necessarily look at that. I don't think Mike wants to look at that either. So anything that can make it better makes more sense to me. So, and maybe 2 feet isn't the right number over there, but I'd rather have something that looks decent, because we got to look at it, and so does Mike as well. So my wife and I have to see that every day too. So.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Pete? All right, thank you for that testimony.
All right.
All right, any other questions for anyone who's spoken to this point? Or anybody else with new evidence or other evidence to provide? All right, we're going to deliberate on this and see what we can offer you relative to this action. You want to give her a shot again, Barb?
Nope.
All right.
So, first, just to preface it a little bit, so, looking at this, there are a number of pieces of this property that are unique in their circumstance, as we find a lot on Nicolay Drive. I mean, Nicolay Drive's a good example of places that it's very difficult to meet exact code. And we've seen that, and I think we've done a fair amount of variance up there. So in terms of preservation of intent, this one I have a little bit of trouble with, but I do think that ultimately I can get by preservation of intent. I understand what the spirit and the purpose of that is, but considering the side-loading garage and kind of how close that side-loading garage is to the front of the house, that makes it very difficult, because, I mean, it kind of looked to me like you'd be in the flower beds if you missed the corner, right?
Yep. Yeah, gotta come back, so I had to come back.
So I think that I can get by that. External exceptional circumstances, so we had a case of where the exact property lot lines were not known initially. This has been an ad hoc arrangement for years, which is also not, which is somewhat exceptional. The fact that y'all have lived together or next door to each other so long is a testament to the power of your neighborhood, but it's also not terribly common, right? And I think that these circumstances, including the difference in narrowness of the driveway, that little chunk that's taken out of the petitioner's property in order to accommodate the driveway kind of complicates everything. So I think I can get by that. Now, in terms of preservation of property rights, I mean, I think that was kind of the heart of his original argument, right? He does not have legal access to the property, and he does not have a legal, any legal way to get there, be it his own driveway or be it via an easement agreement. So, absence of detriment, I don't think there's any particular detriment here. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm in terms of giving a variance for that large of a concrete area, if you were anywhere but on Nicolay, I'd probably just not acquiesce to that because it's tantamount to paving your front yard. But it's been that way for decades, and obviously you enjoy it that way.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and I'm not sure your neighbors can see it, generally, or anybody from the road. I'm not sure anybody from the road can even really see it.
No, when you come in and out of the properties, though, it's right there.
Yeah, but I
That's-
mean,
Say
it's-
from the road.
Oh,
From the road,
No,
yeah.
no.
Yeah.
That's what I.
No, no.
And I would also say that in terms of the, talking about the piece near the garage itself, or the little shed itself, I think that there's only maybe one question in there that, would this be easier if this went down to a 10-foot or a 9-foot driveway? But, that being said, the property line, and I'm assuming that drainage and the trees in that property line are all the way across, and that is not an easy area to traverse.
Correct.
So it seems to me that's allowable as well, because it's not really going to be a sight problem or a walking problem or anything else. I think that's a convenience that's easy enough to grant, and it's not like, the shed wasn't placed with the idea that there was going to be a driveway there. So that was done years and years before, so. And then I think in terms of hardship, I do think that there will be some difficulty in complying with municipal code here. I do not think it's on economic grounds. The question is anybody else, nobody else gets the privilege of having a much bigger turn-in. And while, as a pickup truck owner myself, I understand it doesn't turn well, neither does mine.
Yeah, like I said, to make two moves now.
Yeah, but that's also not a reason.
Right.
So, that's kind of where I stand on it. I believe that at this point, I could be persuaded in voting approval for this. But that's how I'm justifying it. Does anybody else have any added justifications?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Stephen, I come along with pretty much the same findings as you do as I'm looking at the code and what's being attempted here. And I think, in the case of the configuration closer to the house with the circle, we've seen similar stories with the side-loading garages where they're up against the house. And this is, one of the things is, we've got an exceptional circumstances. Nicolay Drive's full of exceptional circumstances. But, we've got this bit about the variance is not so general or recurrent in nature to suggest that the zoning ordinance should be changed. But I do want to say, I think there's something not working quite right with side-loaded garages in the way the code is set for them. And so I think that this configuration, which has been there for almost 40 years at least, is set up in a way to accommodate that side load and to accommodate the structure of this. And I don't necessarily see the need for us to totally scale that back as a part of an approval here. We go with some things sometimes where they've been, pre-authorized grandfathered, they're, a grandfathered non-conforming sort of thing, and I know there's a repaving going on here, but I guess, I'm generally okay with leaving the basic configuration of this Circle Drive as it is, consistent with what the landscaper is trying to do, and probably, with city approval, obviously, when they've got to put this together. So I'm okay, given the test being met here, with approving the variances as requested. I think the case, especially on the garage proximity, the shed garage proximity to the road, to the drive lane, makes some sense. And I don't see a need to push that tighter either. I think it's a reasonable accommodation of that structure, and I guess I'm just saying I'd support a move to approve it as requested.
So perhaps on my way out, I could make this one final motion that might get approval. I move to approve
I second.
both variances.
Yes, both variances.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the requests as presented. We found that these requested variances meet our tests. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry for the 5th degree.
No. Hey, this is what it works.
You did a great job on this, by the way. You came in very prepared. You had your
Thank you.
case laid out. Very well done. Thank you so much for taking all that time.
No, you bet. This is your job, and glad to.
We're all volunteers, actually. The voting members are.
But you don't get what you pay for. We get what we pay for.
All right. Fair enough.
Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, our next meeting is May 19th, 2025. Be there or be square, except for Barb, who is gonna ride off into the zoning sunset.
Yeah, take on some other different responsibilities. So,
Here, thank you for your service.
thank you. It was great. It was great working with you guys.
And if your calendar ever frees up in the future where it makes sense to come back, we'd love to have you.
If you guys are still here, good having it.
It's kind of hard to get off this committee, I think. So, yeah, we'll be here for a bit. All right, if there's no further business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I seconded.
We got a motion to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say bye.
Bye.
All right.
Recording stopped.